Hello everyone, congratulations, well done, and commiserations. We have all made it to episode 53 of the Resurrected or Winners You podcast. We are somehow still here swinging for the fences, and today is a big one, folks. Come inside, huddle round close, turn down those lights, light your fire, and pour yourself a beverage of your choice. For today, my intrepid engineers and friends, we board the flagship, planet-cracking pride of the fleet, the USG Ishimura, for a teardown, nay, a dismemberment of the brand spanking new game by EA and Motor Studio, the utterly fantastic Dead Space Remake. And, as ever, here to sherp you through the halls are myself, David Smiley, and the infatigable, bearded, tattooed freak, Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
I am bowled over by, hands down, the best and most professional introduction to a podcast you've ever done. That was beautiful.
I sat down to do my notes today and thought, you know, like how like every third, I was going to say every third, maybe every 10 podcasts I do, I managed to bring my A game. I was like, I'm doing it today. I'm feeling it. I'm with it. I'm ready to go. We're playing a good game. I'm sitting down with a friend. I've got a whiskey. Can't wait to get going.
Well, that was spellbinding, and as was the game.
It was.
I am in love with it all over again.
I know it's not that long a game, but this is maybe up there with like the quickest both of us have absolutely churned through a game because of fun, not because we need to get it out of our lives like we did.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually had that multiple times, including on the New Game Plus playthrough, where I keep telling myself to go to bed or watch the next episode of The Boys or see my child, but I just can't put the fucking thing down, even though, you know, there is times when my arsehole's doing... Well, I wanted to ask you that, actually. What would you say is your denomination, your GBP denomination of arsehole twitching for this remake? I would say, certainly on your New Game Plus, you were just straight 5p. Yeah. I think for my original playthrough, maybe I pushed it to 5p, 10p. Maybe.
Interesting. I mean, I think we're going to get to a discussion about what we saw / played of the OG Dead Space that we had a look at yesterday, but I find the OG one scarier and still scarier than I find the new one. I wasn't overly scared, and maybe that's given my like relationship with horror games. Maybe that's partly why I loved it so much. But I mean,
maybe
I don't know. No, I think to be fair, I think it's a different kind of fear. It's not like. So, like, I'm trying to think of other horror games that we've played, and we've played a lot for this podcast, but, like, I know the one I like to continually bash on is Alien. I mean, the fear there for me was, like, dull, in the pit of my stomach dread. Whereas I think, for the most part, for me, the fear in Dead Space is sort of exhilarating, oh shit, what's coming fear, which I find a little bit more enjoyable, just personally speaking.
Would you have found it scarier if you knew more about and you'll probably know the word for this, what's the engine that they use that's very much like the AI director from Left 4 Dead in this? What's it called?
The Frostbite? Who are we talking about?
No, they've got a setup in this game which is very similar to that AI director in Left 4 Dead.
Have they?
Where it sort of dynamically changes the placement and number and aggression of all the enemies based on where you are. It's like if you backtrack, because I found it quite a lot of times, if I backtracked somewhere that I was not supposed to go, I'd still get attacked anyway, which then led me to think I was going in the right direction because game logic, there are enemies here, it must be the way to go.
Yeah.
But no, it's the game. If you start fucking about, the game will send them at you. They'll sick them.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. What was your scarier moments of the game? I'm trying to think,
well, every time you have to change something to... Like, you have to power something up in place of the lights that are currently lighting the fucking room.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Turning the effing lights off is where I'm just like, oh no, not again.
The lighting in this game all round is absolutely outstanding.
So like the two things is the lighting, and again, we're probably going to come to it at some point, but why not now, is like the sound design in this game. I actually meant to look it up before this podcast, and I totally forgot, so apologies, I'm doing you all a disservice, listeners, but when we were at uni, we had a lecture with old podcast faithful Tim Connor, in which we did a lesson about this like wave of discordant music in Russia in like the 1930s, in which the sort of idea behind the music was to make the listener, it wasn't meant to be fun, it wasn't meant to be nice, it sort of like basically bucked what people that know music would assume to be like standard song composition, in an attempt to make the listener feel really uneasy. And I think a lot of that is quite present in this. It's maybe not discordant in the same way as this Russian music was supposed to be, but it's certainly like the clanging and banging, it's very mechanical. And like I found it, like walking through an area that had like a lot of rattling and a lot of noise going on when you're wearing a headset, I found it like frustrating in the same way as I would find that noise in real life. And if it's doing that to me, it's doing a good job because it feels genuine. And they also did a good job of using that to sort of hide necromorphs come at you, because you do actually rely on sound quite a lot in this game, I think.
I kind of wish, it's probably the only thing that would ever have made me want to play this on PS5 is the 3D audio setting that you could have, because I don't believe the official Xbox headset can actually handle 3D audio. I believe, but that was a setting that I wished I could have used.
I need someone to show me this 3D audio. So my, like yours, PlayStation headset can apparently do 3D audio, and I've got a couple of pals that are like, "Oh my god, it's amazing!" And then I use it, and I'm like, I cannot tell the difference between this and my Xbox headset, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, completely agree. Can I, if I may interject, I'm going to tell you more about this engine. It's called the Intensify Director.
Right, okay.
So, what it does, it has more than 1,200 events.
Wow.
With things like audio and lighting changes, enemy spawns, surprise attacks. It adjusts what shows up in your path, including enemy spawns and environmental effects such as lightning, fog, and particles. They did a blog post on it, and they said, it's content organization, spawning, and pacing control system. Depending on how we count things, the system has more than 1,200 unique events with a massive variety of combinations possible. So they just wanted to keep that on the go to make you always not know what's coming and keep you on your toes and stop you from lagging behind too much, which felt so organic during the game that I didn't notice it, but it sounds incredibly clever.
And I kind of often feel like the fact that I got through the game and I didn't even notice it shows that it probably worked quite well. Like, it's not one of these things that like is really obvious. Like, I feel like obviously like over a decade's passed, so you would expect things to improve.
15 years this year.
The difference between Left 4 Dead, the AI director, I think is quite stark. Like it's basically just, you've not moved long in quickly enough, so we're just going to send some enemies at you. And that's basically what it is. It's like enemies or no enemies does that thing. But this one's a lot more subtle.
Yeah, the thing that they do things like fog and lightning and all that kind of stuff to...
Oh, the fog is excellent, isn't it?
Yeah, when it's just like sort of sitting on the floor at about like shin height. It's not so, especially when them little babies are running around in there. That's mad. But it just goes to show, like, obviously, if you were a complete veteran of the game and you've played it loads and loads, that you just fundamentally won't get the same experience. You won't get the same experience on 2 playthroughs based off of that anyway. But if you just come straight from the original to the remake, it's not going to feel copied and pasted, because nothing of the game is copied and pasted. It's one of the greatest remakes that's ever been put together. This rivals like that Resident Evil 1 remake in terms of like they've taken almost every single like fundamental of the game and improved it and taken out what didn't work and made things better. Yeah, in almost every regard.
Pretty much. And I totally agree with you. There's bits and pieces like maybe I'm just misremembering it, because you touched on at the start like the fear levels, and I feel like my fear levels were pretty low for this game, but I also, because I'd played like Dead Space 1 is one of my favourite games, so like I've played it a couple times and I kind of knew what was happening, so like it was stuff I was expecting to happen, whereas I've got friends that are playing through Dead Space for the first time and they're finding it incredibly scary. There was one bit in my head, and it's like one of the standout moments in video games, full stop, let alone Dead Space. It's when you sort of encounter your first necromorph and you're running to the lift, and then you get inside the lift door closes, and then the necromorph like busts through the lift door, and then just as he's about to get you, it slams shut again. I remember playing that in this remake and thinking this is really slow and stunted compared to what it was in the original version. But then,
Well, the key point there is that the door is already open as well
Yeah.
in this version, and in the original it's closed. You have to open it and wait for it to open, whereas this time it's
Yes.
already open for you.
yes, so there was that. Oh God, it's coming! It's coming! It's coming! As you're waiting for the door to open, which I still got when we went back to play the original one, but it's not as I'm trying. I was right. I'm going to get through a whole podcast without using the word visceral because it's this game's fault that became one of the go-to.
Well, it was the name of the developer, so yeah.
It felt it's not quite what I remembered it to be, which I think is. I think we also touched on this when we were playing a game and chatting. I think a marker often.
Marker.
Often of a good remake is that it sort of fills in the gaps of what you remembered the old game to be. So there's bits and pieces that the old game, GoldenEye was very good. Well, no, there's never been a remake of GoldenEye. Anyway,
Well, there has, but it never got released.
There's the you're playing things and it often sort of is how your memory remembers it, and then you'll go back and play the original game and see that they've actually done quite a lot of work. There's quite a lot of that in this game, I felt.
Well, yeah, definitely. Especially now that I know how different it could be from the original. Like the enemy placement's going to be completely, well, not completely different, but there will be elements that are going to be completely changed.
What were you coming into this game with what was your Dead Space opinion coming into this game?
Well, I will also just quickly add in that I mean, you heard me jump quite a lot of times.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't ask you. Sorry. Yeah, you do your fear chat.
I was probably just quite tense a lot of the time while playing it. And another thing that's hard to sort of quantify is the fact that you and I obviously played this not ages ago, but we did smash through it, and we've then both of us have started a new game plus, and I'm now playing it on hard. You've played the original for a bit, so there is always that scenario with horror games. Apart from Alien, I guess, because that just never stops fucking with you. But most of the time, the power fantasy towards the end is real, and in this case, definitely feels that way again. So I think you and I have come through it where we've got to the end where we feel powerful and capable and nothing's going to bother us anymore, and then we started it again, and we've now really re-experienced the beginning of the game with this newfound big balls. I'm more nervous about playing Dead Space 2, spoiler, for the next pod, than I was to play this, because I don't remember anything of Dead Space 2 other than right at the beginning you're in a straitjacket and you've got to run around away from them.
So there's
the thing with the eye.
The thing with the eye and the straitjacket are the two bits I remember, and I think I'm the same as you. I don't remember much after this. The problem with Dead Space is, as obviously as time went on, like to me, Dead Space. Again, remembering this came out around. It wasn't. Was this? How does this come out in relation to Resident Evil 5? Like, mate, let's just have a look at that.
I'd say maybe the same year.
So Resident Evil 5 came out in 2005, and this came out in 2008. So this.
Oh shit! Okay, way after.
So this is way after, but obviously still in the same console and still in the same wheelhouse as the sort of Resident Evil games. And given how the Resident Evil series has sort of resurrected itself, I'm not sure I necessarily want to stand by this opinion, but for years I would always say my favourite Resident Evil game was Dead Space.
Oh yeah.
I think
I would often say it's the best one since Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
So I was kind of with you there.
And we've got Resi 4 remake coming this year as well. So we're going to
horror is in a really good place.
So good.
Moment.
So good.
Silent Hill 2, remember, that's coming back again.
Yes. Oh yeah, good shout. Yeah. Oh, we've got a fun year ahead of us. So where I was going with that is to bear in mind that the time period in this where this game came out. It came out at a period where the Resident Evil series was starting to lose its way, and it was still doggedly, for some reason, sticking to the cannot move and shoot thing, which I know you're okay with. I think I'm only
okay because I'm used to it. I wouldn't be okay with it.
I also want to say you're subsequently okay with it. I think back during this time, it was just it was a deep frustration for a lot of people that the Resident Evil wouldn't modernise their game.
If Resident Evil Remake came out and wouldn't let you move and shoot, I'd be fucking
furious.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this game came out and it was just a breath of fresh air. It sort of followed the rough sort of mansion thing that Resident Evil does by taking you obviously from a horror mansion and putting you in space in a sci-fi environment, and it updated the controls in a way, and the controls felt modern, it felt fresh, it felt like, and the necromorphs still felt dangerous, and I think that was what always jumped out at me. They were dangerous, and it flew in the face of the excuse that the developers of Resident Evil were using at that time, and that they wanted you not to be able to move and shoot because of heightened tension. I was like, you can do tension and you can do good controls at the same time. These are not mutually exclusive things. And it was interesting sort of playing this game and also coming back to it in that it still holds up fairly well today. I mean, like,
it looked like it, and I didn't play the original, but
in terms of how the
controls looked very serviceable.
It's very serviceable, but I think the only thing that's really changed is there's different button placements. So apart from that, so like instead of, like, I think stamp is RT or R2 if you are playing a PlayStation, whereas I think it's RB. RT does something differently, and they had switched a couple of things. Reload is left trigger and A, whereas I think it's just X in the new one.
That's a proper Resident Evil control. That is holding aim and pressing a different button than shoot.
Run isn't clicking in the left stick, you hold LB. It's just little things like that were throwing me off. But for the most part, it handles perfectly well. And I think actually, like we spoke about this endlessly, that in Mario games gone by, these games still handle and play as well as they ever did. And I think that's true of this game. And I think that's
owes a lot to a really clever mechanic and a really unique way of approaching horror in a game, and making, as you say, making the enemies feel like a threat, because you have to take them down in a completely different way. And you have to be careful and steady with your aim under the immense tension of them just all legging it at you, and you're trying to shoot limbs, which are obviously, especially in this case, very thin targets rather than body shots that will do nothing, or at least will waste more ammo than it will use.
When you are thinking back to the Dead Space remake, what are your standout moments? Are these standout, like, even like gameplay moments or parts of the game or story, like whatever you want to choose in this? And then to sort of build on that, are these things that you remember from the original, and do you remember them, if at all, if they're different in any way?
Well, you playing the original was really useful for us, because if you hadn't have done, I wouldn't have realised like how many things were different. The game definitely seems harder.
Yeah.
So the dismemberment has been reworked to a really effective level, where, you know, they've got this whole thing about this flesh is being, you know, stripped from the bone rather than just the limbs come off after a couple of shots. It felt like when you were playing it, even though it was on the same difficulty, that you were taking the legs off in a couple of shots and the arm off in one shot.
They were going down quickly.
Whereas this one, it feels like a lot of effort was needed to keep shooting away at one specific limb before it came off.
It's hidden in my notes here somewhere as well. That's kind of jogged my memory that we'll probably come to, or I'll stumble across at some point. But the remake has significantly reduced rates of health drops than the original did.
Does it?
Yeah, so it probably is a harder game in that respect.
We should have found it scarier, really, but for some reason we didn't.
I could remember
too many summers of Resi and Spooktoberfest. We're vets. We don't care anymore.
Sorry, before you carry on, I mean, like, for example, the problem is that I remembered far too much of the game, in that, like, so like there's a bit in the game where that, you know, that tentacle thing comes out and it grabs you as you're trying to walk through a door. It happens slightly differently. It happens at the end of the mission loop, that sort of area loop in the first game, as it happens in the first, as you're going through the door, it happens. Sorry, I'm stumbling over myself. In the remake, in the OG one, it's after you've done that section and you're coming back that it grabs you. But the thing that I think,
which is a cool touch.
It's a cool touch, and in a way to keep you on your toes. But I didn't remember it specifically enough for that. I just remembered at some point it happened, so I was waiting for it. And as I was playing through, the thing I found,
saw the big anus in the wall and thought,
yes. The thing is,
that's going to touch me soon.
That I think it does really well in horror is that you go into that area and you see the hole in the wall and you're like, oh god, oh god, oh god, what is that? And then it does nothing with it for like half an hour, and to the point that you just sort of forget it's there.
Yeah.
and you start ignoring it, and then it's once you sort of move on in your brain and forget it's there, then it hits you. And I think that's a really, really good moment and a really well done horror moment, and that's a standout moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sense of scale for this game feels far more impressive than it did the first time around. Like, a lot of the game obviously is kept in these claustrophobic, sweaty metal corridors, but that moment where you go into the first anti-grav section, which is another thing that is far improved from the original.
Oh yes, million miles better.
And the lights all come on when you're in like I don't know what part of it that it's supposed to be. There's like these big sort of turbines or whatever it is either side of you, and you're in that massive open space. That just felt like so oppressive when those lights slowly come on, and it eventually you see the size of the room that you're floating around in. The field of view is also bigger as well in this than the original. It's a lot more closed in, whereas this one you get to see more about it. So I think it just kind of felt like more of an open living space than it did more of just like a gameplay tunnel in the original.
Do you think that the sort of reimagined layout of the game helped with the sense of scale?
Yeah, the interconnectivity. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was one thing I thought was always there, but it wasn't until I went back to the remake and then was doing research for this podcast that it's a static level structure, even to the point that in the areas that you revisit in the old game, they are mirrored. Is mirrored the right word? They're basically like for like takes of the actual level, sort of remake, like copy paste jobs with things added and taken away. So when you're coming back to places and it's been like, I don't know, like messed up, or there's been an explosion happened, they've literally taken the same level, copy pasted it, and then edited the copy paste level. So even when you're revisiting areas in the original game, it's a different area, if that makes sense.
Oh, so they're just loading it, and then you're not going back.
Never.
You're loading a new bit. Yeah.
Whereas this game, you can sort of access almost the entire ship from the get-go, and obviously to try and sort of mitigate or stunt the player's progress, they've then added in security clearance levels which weren't present in the first game.
Yeah. Or Daniels is there in some sort of computer lab.
And then there's that master control bit that opens itself up later on that isn't in the first game at all, which it again sort of links back to what I was saying before about it sort of filling in the gaps, because that's a definitive improvement in my mind.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's one I didn't notice until I went looking, which is a shame, kind of, in a way.
Well, but that, I guess, again, it's hard to know whether to be fully critical of something like that, because if we don't notice that it's new, as you said earlier, it's maybe just your mind tricking you into thinking that's always how it was, because that's always how it should have been. And we're now experiencing it the way that it should have been, or at least if it was capable of being that way, then it should have been. And now it just feels more rounded and polished, and it just, like you say, our rose-tinted spectacles are making us feel like the original game was like that.
I guess the other thing before we started diving into the gameplay and the settings proper that I wanted to bring up is I wanted to gauge your opinion and feeling on the sort of redone characters. So obviously Isaac Clarke speaks in this game. He didn't speak in Dead Space 1. The story of Nicole is significantly fleshed out in a way that it wasn't in Dead Space 1. And I guess on that note, before I let you loose, the voice actor for Isaac Clarke in Dead Space 2 and 3 came back for the remake,
which is brilliant.
As did the voice actor for Nicole that was in Dead Space 2.
Which I assume is why their character models look older than they did in the original one, which has pissed some people off for some reason.
Yes, his voice is much older, I guess, because it's like,
it's 15 years.
15 years has passed, so...
Oh, no, he wasn't in the original, was he? So, yeah.
I bet you if you went back and listened to our voices back in 2008 when we were talking about this in the OG version of the Winners U podcast, then our voices would sound very different. So it makes sense to age up the character.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I guess for motion capping, it's kind of
You know what? Also, yeah, for motion capping as well. Sorry, I asked you a question, then I'm just railroading over the top. But
I've now forgot.
every time you say so, I'll go back over it. Every time you say something, it kicks something loose in my head. I think the aged up characters actually make more sense as well, because Nicole is like a senior doctor on the ship, and Isaac's obviously quite a senior engineer.
Yeah.
In his position, it would be odd if they were in their 20s.
I prefer him to sort of look this age.
Yeah.
Where he's like you say, he's been through a lot. It makes more sense, and it leans further into the fact that for a lot of the time he's not quite unflappable, but he's very focused. Mm-hmm. He's often the voice of reason or the voice of hope in this game. Whereas I've actually seen people criticize the fact that he's talking now, which you and I both agreed on before we went to record that. Mm-hmm. Silent protagonists feel incredibly outdated now, and they just don't make any narrative sense at all. No. There's no reason this guy should ignore everybody talking to him. He just wouldn't do that. So, and they knew that even in the original trilogy, because they gave him a voice in the very second game. So, I don't agree. I don't necessarily think that Isaac himself is, the most engaging and wonderful character that's really layered and deep, but I do think that his sort of mild-mannered everyman persona is appropriate for the scenario that he finds himself in. He's just an engineer. He's just a bloke there doing what he thinks is a normal job, and therefore he's just a normal guy. And I don't mind him being not quite vanilla, but closer to that than someone like Duke Nukem or Nathan Drake.
Yeah,
I just don't mind him being a dull engineer bloke, because maybe that's what he just is.
Yeah, it's something. It's a sort of character trope. Trope, is that the right word? Character direction that I could go either way on. I mean, having a sort of bland main protagonist is fairly common in media, because it allows the viewer or the person interacting with the game or the book to sort of plant their own character over the top of it. I mean, it's only the ones jump in mind because that Harry Potter game's about to come out. But Harry Potter is an example. I mean, he's incredibly dull and incredibly bland. The interesting character interactions come from the people around him, not him. Yeah. And I guess that's the same with Isaac, and it's deliberately so that you can sort of slap your own self into it. I can come and go in that, and I can see either way. I think if it's done well, it's absolutely fine. But at the same time, I'm also okay if you've got a particular direction, theme, or vibe you want your game or book or movie to have, then just to go with that. I just think it needs to be done well, and I think this was done pretty well. He talks. He doesn't say anything overly interesting, but he talks, and he feels like a real character enough in a way that Isaac Clarke in the first game just doesn't feel at all.
Yeah, he just feels like a single-minded, relentless husk, just smashing through enemies, but not having any opinion on any of it. It's just, there has to be. Yeah, the silent protagonist removal was definitely the right move for this game. I think the other voice actors are different. I don't know how worth it is to touch on the elephant in the room of the needless sexuality exposition of some of the characters that boils down to little more than a word.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel. I don't have a problem with anything like that being in any game. I just have a problem with the fact that it just feels really cynical and forced from EA or whoever it was who made that choice, just to have Daniels say she's got a girlfriend, and some guy says it on a voice log that we never even meet the character, but he still feels the need to bring up his sexuality. It just seems. I don't understand what it brings to the plot. I don't understand how that could be even perceived ever as representation. And quite frankly, if I was part of that community, I would probably feel insulted that they just thought saying the word girlfriend when you're a girl is enough of representation, because it feels really, really cynical to me. I don't know why they did it.
I think I'm in exactly the same place as you. I'm quite happy, and I think it's probably a good thing. Not probably, it is a good thing overall that we've got increased diversity in games, and we're looking to explore these different areas. And the fact is that people in real life have different sexualities, skin colours and things like that, and these things should be represented in games. To me, there's bits and pieces in this game where in my opinion, it feels a little bit ham-fisted. And you're right,
that's exactly
it's
it.
just there, like they're wanting to tick a box, because they say it in a way that is not. It doesn't flow. It doesn't fit with the conversation. It's just like shoehorning it in a way that I'm just like, there are better ways to say these things, and if it doesn't come naturally to the script and it doesn't fit naturally, I mean, these characters in the game can still be gay. You just don't have to say it in a way that doesn't feel real.
They really do have more important things to be talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, like
at this point.
I mean, like, yeah, I'm all for it. I just think it was a detriment, and to me it felt like tick box exercise rather than being something they actually wanted to do.
I would rather they introduced a character that was gay, and had that character there, than have a character that was in the original just saying she has a girlfriend now that she didn't say before. I mean, because there is no need for that.
The perfect example is Prey, and it's one that was so fitting with the script that we didn't even bring it up. Is that there's specific side missions where you go off to find someone's partner, and then you discover at some point that it's a girlfriend and a boyfriend of the same sex, and it just doesn't bring it up, and they just sort of they play it flat, and it's just like, this is my partner, and then you go and I think it's a female character, and then you go into their room to like go and find something. It's like, I can't remember even what it is, but you're going to find something, you go into the room, you find it, and it happens to be a female. The game doesn't really mention it doesn't talk about it doesn't pick it up in any way. It's just like, this is it, this is what we are, we're fine. It doesn't just sort of blast it at you from because I wouldn't start just randomly talking about my girlfriend if I was about to get torn apart by aliens.
I don't, obviously I can't speak for how the LGBT plus community wants to be represented. So whether, I just can't see that they would be satisfied with them saying, well, if my girlfriend did that for me, and they go, yay, I'm gay too. I don't see that happening. No. If you've got nothing to say with it, and you're not going to build anything around it, it doesn't need to be said, because then it just looks like virtue signaling, because I think that is what it is. Because it's fucking EA. There's nothing that EA could ever tell me to make me think that they care about that in any way.
No.
I'm sure their culture has got nothing. It may do. They may have a culture that is.
I just don't trust EA and Blizzard, Activision. I just don't trust them with that stuff because they've got such a poor record with it.
Yeah, exactly, and that just feels like an excuse to be like, we don't hate the gays. Look, there's 2 of them in our game now. What are you going to do about that? So, okay, fine. I'm glad, but I'm sure people would rather play a game with if there's a gay character that there's a. What was it? Is Gone Home got something like that in it?
Yeah, well, the whole premise is a story is a girl that's
that's
struggling, so she runs off.
Yeah, which surely is what people who have had to come out and had to deal with
felt
that.
Like a real story, and it was
that felt like a fleshed out character that understands the struggle of people who have to come to terms with things like that and live that way. Whereas this is just like someone saying it. Oh, old boyfriends. In a voice log of a character we never meet. That is dumb. Also,
do better, EA.
I mean, if you care about the fucking gender neutral bathrooms, then you're an idiot. Because it's 200 years in the future. I would expect to have Robococks by that point. I mean, we're talking about an era where fucking, like in Binary Domain, you got USB umbilical cords because androids can have fucking human babies with humans. So. Don't worry about the toilets, mate. Just shit next to a chick. It's fine. Or whatever you want to be into 2500. Fuck it. I'll be a rhino or something. I don't know.
I tell you what, though, in a public bathroom, I am going to be far more wary of doing a massive jobby in a gender-neutral bathroom than I would be in a male-only bathroom.
That's basically what I have at work, and I had it today because we have the toilets are kind of like they're separated. There's one cubicle each for men and women on our admin corridor, separated by the fucking kitchen. It's the worst place to take a shit I've ever been in my life. So when you go
to the kitchen, you're boxed in by people taking a jobby.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a rogue like stink bomber as well that we're all trying to figure out. Because some bloke is absolutely wrecking the joint.
Oh, that was the worst. In my previous job, our toilets were right next to the kitchen as well. And during COVID, when we were in the office, the rule was the doors always have to be open, so people would go in and lay the absolute smack down on the toilet.
That is ridiculous.
And then you'd have to leave the door open. So then the kitchen just stunk as shit all day.
It's just, but you also get like, poo anxiety where you're sitting there ready to drop the kids off at the pool, and then you hear some, like, because it's almost all fucking women as well at my place.
These gaggling geese coming into the toilet.
Yeah, and they're all just like in the kitchen, and then I have to kind of wait, like clench the anus, and then as soon as I hear the kettle go, I think, well, that's probably enough noise to stifle this, and then let the bombs fly, and then hope that they've had enough conversation or kettle boiling noise to not hear it. So yeah, I mean, you're right. That's what I would care about on the Ishimura, is the fact that I've got to take a shit.
Well, I'm just thinking like the Ishimura toilets
Nicole.
must be quite similar to White Hart Lane. So imagine all your trials and tribulations and toilet anxiety that you're getting in White Hart Lane. Add that in to a bunch of ladies going about.
Exactly.
You're in trouble. You're just going to explode one day.
That and the showers seem to randomly turn on as well.
Yeah. Necromorphs mean showers turn on. I think that's the rule.
Yeah. Man, what a piece of junk that Ishimura is.
Yes.
Also, it's the most evil ship in history. It's like if Darth Vader's Death Star, rather than shooting ships with lasers, decided to give them a fucking prostate exam and rip out their fucking innards. It's a planet-cracking monster of doom.
Did we ever look up what Ishimura means? I assume it's like a Japanese.
Well, it does seem to have some kanji in the loading screens and stuff, so I assume it does mean something in Japanese.
So the USG Ishimura was the flagship of the Concordance Extraction Corporation and the first planet-cracking class ship. The Ishimura was also the first vessel of its size to utilise the shock point drive, whatever that is, for large-scale commercial and deep space expeditions. That's what it is. It was named after Hideki Ishimura, the astrophysicist and inventor of the shock point drive. Okay, that makes sense. At least it's in world.
What a funny scenario it is that this is a ship based around a big corporation going to planets and extracting all the core useful minerals from it. Whereas, what are we playing right now? We're playing a corporation going back to a beloved franchise and extracting all the core goodness from it to resell it to us. How ironic. Luckily, it was actually really bloody good.
It was really fucking good. Right, before we move on to the setting, for some reason I've got a wee bit of a blurb here between... Well, we haven't really spoken about the game. Have we spoken about the gameplay? Do you think we've covered that? Do you feel quite happy? Is there anything you want to bring up and discuss?
It's still really, really excellent. I assume you think that it's bettered now. I definitely think that the way that they handle the upgrade system is so much better than the original, and the way that you get the weapons as you go through rather than having to buy some from the shop. But the upgrade tracks just make so much more sense now than they did in the original. Yeah,
so for those of you that can't remember, we discovered that lunchtime we were re-looking at Dead Space OG, is that so when you load up, I think I've got it in my notes somewhere, so apologies, I'll probably stumble across it at some point.
Hey, if you need to take a second just to find them, I'll just edit it out. Don't worry about flowing it. Okay.
The upgrade trees are all unlocked from the beginning in Dead Space 1, but the sort of wrinkle to that is the nodes don't all do things. So in the remake, every time you put a node in a slot, it's going to give you some kind of upgrade, whether that's like a power, whether that's a capacity. There's like reload speed and stuff like that, and then
projectile
there's like
speeds and stuff.
Projectile speeds or special item like weapon augmentations that do like bonus damage and things like that, or make the ripper bounce a bit more around the place. Whereas in the original Dead Space, you had to sort of make your way to the sections to get the unlocks. So
which is annoying.
3 or 4 nodes before you would actually get one upgrade, which was much more stingy.
And didn't you say as well that, like, for example, with the suit, you actually had to upgrade like the stasis module separate?
That's right.
To it?
So in the new game, the stasis module, the suit, and the air is all interlinked as one. Whereas in the OG one, it's 3 separate things that you have to upgrade. It's just it's just a modernized version, isn't it? The inventory management I felt was I didn't really have to mess with it in the
You were having to mess with it in the OG, though.
in the OG one. I was filling up my inventory fast and having to actually use my what do you call it, like cache, I guess you would call it.
Well, you'd never needed to use any health. Remember, you went through like about an hour, you didn't even get touched once. You're just an absolute machine. You're like John Wick in the fucking space.
That's very true. So like, but again, that links back to what we were saying before. It was chucking med kits at me left and right, and I just didn't need them.
Yeah.
Whereas the new version is much more stingy with the med kits. Let's do a quick setting, and then I'll have a pee break.
Yeah, good.
So the setting of this game is set in the 26th century. The story. In fact, I didn't read my little blurb that I said I had between gameplay and setting. So, Dead Space is a 2023 survival horror game developed by Motive Studio. I need to pronounce my T's when you're podcasting, David.
Sorry to interrupt already. What have Motive done before?
I've got a feeling that Motive were made to make this game. Let's have a look.
Oh, okay. Are they? Oh, you'll tell me in a minute. I assume they're in-house EA then, are they? Or second party or whatever.
Parent organisation is EA. Oh, they have games developed. What have they done here? Star Wars Battlefront 2. They did the So they did that alongside DICE. Star Wars Squadrons, which the new Dead Space uses the same engine as Star Wars Squadrons.
Okay, and I know people seem to be pretty relatively pleased with that.
I've had that installed on my Xbox, thinking I need to play this for about. Well, it came out in 2020, so probably about 2 years at least.
Yeah, same. I think it was on PS Plus as well. I think I've got it on every console now.
They've made Dead Space, and apparently they're rumoured to be working on an untitled Iron Man game, and they, at some point, were working on a game called Gaia,
yeah.
Which was cancelled. So that's not coming. So yeah, there were Dead Space, Star Wars Squadrons, and Battlefront 2. They were sort of one of many developers. I'm assuming that's like a Call of Duty type thing. There's like wads of developers working on it.
Probably, yeah.
So a remake of the 2008 game of the same name developed by EA, Redwood Shores. It was released on January 27th, 2023 for PS5, Windows, and Xbox Series X and S. It is the first release in the Dead Space series since 2013's Dead Space 3. 10 years.
I guess it's important to point out that it's not on Xbox One and PS4.
It's not. No, great.
It's just straight up current gen game.
I'm going to jump my notes in a little bit here. The OG release date of this game was the 14th of October 2008. Jeez Louise. The Xbox Metacritic of that is 89%. The PS3 Metacritic of that is 88%. And the PC Metacritic of that is 86%. Now, Alex, interestingly, do you want to have a guess at what the Xbox, PS5, and PC Metacritic are of this game? The re-release, the remake?
Yeah, I heard... I think it was on Digital Foundry. They said that the original PS3 version was apparently way worse than the 360 one, so I'm surprised it did so.
I've also heard there's problems in the PS5 version that I've not seen.
Yes, I think this is the Xbox and PC are supposed to be the two definitive ones.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hope it got in the 90s. I can't see why it wouldn't.
Interestingly, so again, to
as the draft. The 2001 draft winner, I would back myself to be correct.
I would normally back your ass. So Xbox, PS3, PC was 89, 88, and 86 respectively. The Xbox current, PS5, and PC was 89, 88, and 87 respectively. Very nearly the same. Yeah,
that's mad.
Which was. I just thought it was quite an interesting serendipitous link, which I think is probably, actually, to be fair, I mean, like, me personally, I'd have it in the 90s, no problem, and be quite happy with that. But the fact that it is scoring almost identically to the first game, I think says a lot to how much of a quality remake this is, because the game was, again, like you said before, for me, an all-time great. And this is taken an all-time great and modernised it perfectly in almost every way. I can't really think of a way that they've made this game worse, other than the odd bugs I encountered, which we haven't touched on
a couple of floaty things and your T-posing man, yeah.
I also had one that you weren't watching me at the time, but there was one of those babies with the triple tentacles came out. And I shot his tentacles off, and it was in a bathroom, and then it just proceeded to ricochet around the bathroom at like 100 miles an hour. So I was just like chasing it, watching it run around the bathroom.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a fine one.
I've tried to hit it out of the air like some kind of, when you go down the baseball thing when you're in America and it shoots the balls at you.
The only one that annoyed
batting
me was,
cage. There we go.
The T-posing man. Batting cage. We're going to have to come back to batting cages one day because I'm going to say this until we do it. We need to do Yakuza 0.
I was hoping that's what you were going to say. I thought to myself, batting cage. I'm going to say Yakuza in a minute, and then you said it for me.
Here it goes. Because I think I've played about 10 hours of that game, Yakuza 0, and a good 8 hours I've just been messing about with side missions, batting cages, racing little cars, and doing really badly.
Oh, you need a guide for that car racing thing. There's no point doing it without a guide. It's just stupid.
We're going to come back to this game at some point. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's another game that's been sitting installed on my Xbox for years, waiting for me to come back to.
Yeah, I'm going to happily play that again. Such a great game.
As
is Dead Space.
As is Dead Space.
As is the setting of Dead Space, because sci-fi horror is an underutilized genre.
It is. I was trying to think of other sci-fi horrors. Well, Alien's the obvious one, isn't it?
Fucking Callisto shitical. Man, they look so much worse now this has come out. That game was bad enough, but now this game's been done on top of it.
I just look at Callisto Protocol and think, like, you made Dead Space and then you made this. What? How did this happen? This must be like budget, time. I don't know. Something's gone wrong with this.
I guess they decided that we can't have the dismemberment mechanic because they'll just say we ripped it off.
Yeah.
So what can we do instead? Let's make Punch Out.
Yeah, you're probably
zombies.
right. Because I even think like the setting of Callisto Protocol is awesome. Like I'm into that.
Yeah.
Like, Space Prison's great.
Yeah. I was watching a video on YouTube about this Dead Space, and the guy said that because Callisto Protocol was made by some of the original Dead Space guys and is so shit, he thought to himself, man, was Dead Space shit? And I just don't remember. Because these guys made that, and this is awful, but no, the remake has clarified that, no, Dead Space is in fact incredible.
Dead Space is awesome. And it's set in the 26th century. The story follows engineer Isaac Clarke, a crewman on a repair vessel called the USG Kellion, assigned to the USG Ishimura, a massive planetary mining ship, as we've discussed, that has gone silent above the planet Aegis 7. His crew includes computer specialist Kendra Daniels, Chief Security Officer Zach Hammond, and co-pilots and security personnel Corporals Haley Johnson and Aidan Chen. One thing before I continue, actually, that I wanted to mention that I never before is that in the original game, or sorry, let's start with the remake because that's the one that's most fresh in our memories. The remake, when you crash into the Ishimura, one of the pilots, she breaks her ankle and she stays on the ship.
Yeah.
In the original game, all of them get off and they all walk up to the start, and then because I had to go back to the Kellion at the end, and there's nobody on it. There's no
it's just empty and it just blows up with you on it, right?
Yeah, which is really interesting. And
who's in the crew in the original? Has it got those two people in it as well? Has it got Chen and the other one?
Yeah, it's got the
the other one's name, did you say?
It's a different. So we've got Zach Hammond who's in it, Kendra Daniels who's there, specialist Kendra Daniels, she's in both. Chief Officer.
Why do you need that on a repair ship, by the way? What's she gonna do? I suppose computers are a lot more prevalent on a spaceship, so maybe she is needed to repair those. But imagine that's like me, isn't it?
Yeah, get you on.
You're an IT guy. Off you go with the engineer off to a spaceship. Fix that.
Zach Hammond's in both, and so that they've got co-pilots and security personnel. Corporal Haley Johnson, she's in it. Aidan Chen is in this. There's something that's different. Because I remember saying this, we'll need to go back and have a look.
Well, they definitely don't seem to do the whole thing about Chen being jettisoned, or do they?
I wonder if so Aidan Chen's in it. I wonder if Haley Johnson's not in it and it's a man, and they've changed it to a lady. Because as I remember thinking, like looking at this dude, thinking because there's a dude in it that's not in it.
Must be then.
Yeah. So I think they've switched those ones out, which makes sense. It's fine. While investigating a distress call sent by the ship's medical officer and Isaac's girlfriend's Nicole Brennan, the Kellion's crew is attacked by creatures made from mutated human corpse corpses called necromorphs. Isaac is forced to fend for himself as he tries to save his crewmates and learn the truth behind the loss of the Ishimura. Along the way, he encounters several survivors, including Nicole, horticulturist Elizabeth Cross, who we'll come back to later, engineer and Cross's boyfriend Jacob Temple, again, who we'll come back to later, Ishimura Chief Science Officer Terence Kine, again later, and insane scientist Dr. Chalice Mercer. And that's sort of the blurb of the game, which to me seems like a good point to take a break.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and discuss the plot.
I always get necromorphs and xenomorphs mixed up.
Xenomorph is the alien dude, right?
Yeah.
Right, Alex. It's time to do some plottage.
Okay.
Right, so this is a bit of reading, so apologies, listeners. You're about to get a bit of me, but then you'll get plenty of Alex after that. So we're just going to dive in.
No one's wanting that.
And get through it. So the Kellian crew, this is the plot of the game. The Kellian crew arrives in the outskirts of Aegis 7. Unfortunately, due to a crash of some kind, the Kellian is forced to crash land into the hangar bay of the Ishimura. So I want you to actually remind me of this, because this is one of the wonderful things about doing this podcast. When I was reading through the plot synopsis of this game again before this podcast, it said it's due to a navigation error. I thought it got hit by something and then crashed.
Well, this is the thing, because they seem to be just admiring the Ishimura on their way in. I'm surprised it doesn't just look dilapidated and falling apart and on fire, because it is when you get in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I never really pay attention to what's going on out the front window of the ship either, and I really should have done on the 2 times I've done it
Something happens.
This playthrough.
Well, 3 times for me. Something happens, the shutters close, and you crash land into the hangar bay of the Ishimura. So an injured Johnson stays behind as Isaac, Kendra, Hammond.
I guess if they're expecting, because they keep complaining about comms, not having any comms. So potentially, I guess if there is supposed to be some kind of navigational, maybe some kind of tractor beam that's going to pull them into the ship because everybody's dead, it's not happening. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I think you're probably right there. Yeah, so an injured Johnson, who we spoke about before, stays behind as Isaac, Kendra, Hammond, and Chen investigate this seemingly abandoned ship. Necromorphs made from the corpses of the Ishimura's crew at some point then attack the group, killing Chen and forcing them to separate. As they battle the undead crew, the trio investigate the Ishimura to repair its damage and find out what caused the outbreak. Complicated matters. Necromorphs destroy the Kellian, which killed Johnson in the process, and Hammond later locks a reanimated Chen in an escape pod and ejects him from the ship. While exploring and repairing the Ishimura, Isaac reunites with Nicole and meets Cross, who is Nicole in extreme quotation marks, who's trying to kill a giant necromorph called the Leviathan. It's also periodically. Oh no, this is not the giant necromorph. That's called the Leviathan. Is a Leviathan. Sorry. Isaac also discovers the presence of a fanatical church of Unitology, a cult that led to his devout Unitologist mother, which I forgot all about, killing his father and herself.
Yeah.
Which, as an addendum and an addition to the Dead Space remake, then also negatively impacts the relationship between himself and Nicole. A bit of a rough link you think he makes there. I think Isaac's just been a bit mean when they have that discussion about what his mum did. He sort of almost blames Nicole for it, which has just seemed, I don't know, it seemed a bit out of sorts. Not
it
quite
did,
right.
But I guess grief can do that to the best of us.
I guess so. Isaac also discovers the existence of something known as the Marker, which seems to have caused the outbreak of the necromorphs on board the ship. The surviving members of the crew set about trying to attract a rescue ship while they are besieged by enemy attacks, and as well as psychologically induced hallucinations by the Marker, as well as the attacks by the necromorphs. Isaac encounters Dr. Mercer, who sends a necromorph he created to kill him so he can bring the Marker to Earth and cause a phenomenon he calls convergence. after Isaac launches an SOS beacon into space. We'll need to touch on that bit because I think you mentioned, like me, you had a bit of trouble with that part of the game, launching that asteroid that you had set the marker to. Did you struggle with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to that possibly. Encounters some, she sends it. Convergence, blah 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 blah. In space, a military ship called the USM Valor then arrives, but suffers their own outbreak, having picked up Chen's escape pod earlier. The Valor then crashes into the Ishimura after it's sort of overrun and taken over by the rampant Chen. Isaac and Hammond.
Rampant Chen.
Rampant Chen. Isaac and Hammond board the former, board the Valor. To recover its singularity core, which will allow them to then plug into their own ship, and then use as an escape into a singularity core for an escape shuttle that Hammond found. But they then discover the Valor was sent to eliminate the ship as well as any survivors. How they discover that is it's meant to be a random scout ship that is basically loaded with the nukes. It turns out that this ship was sent to blow up the Ishimura because they had discovered what had happened on board.
Yeah.
Upon reaching the ship's core, Hammond sacrifices himself when Chen's necromorph corpse attacks him during an apparent psychotic episode where he seems to struggle with the reality of Chen's previous and brutal death. Yeah, that was the bit that kind of threw me, because he's like happily to eject him from the ship at one point, and then he's like, "Oh, it's Chen, I can't kill him." But I assumed that it was just the sort of, like the sort of constant picking away psychologically, just like these psychological attacks sort of built up over time.
I suppose if you've got the presence of the marker there, which is what's caused a lot of this in the first place, you can just easily use that as like a get out of jail free card. Just like, marker made him do it.
The other thing I noticed between the remake and the old one when I was playing, I think I mentioned it, but again, I can't remember if you were watching at the time. When you're walking around the Ishimura during the early game, there's a lot of whispering that's like search and discover and like look for things and like telling you to do different things that I didn't notice in the first time, and that was quite a nice little thing for me because it made me realise that I forgot the markers constantly like basically bashing at your psyche the whole time. So in addition to the necromorphs, you've got this thing psychologically attacking you the entire time, which is almost worse. Upon return to the Ishimura after the surviving crew encounter a man called Kine who convinces Isaac and Kendra that they should return the marker to Aegis 7 to control the outbreak. Again, like at the time I was like, I'm not clear how they think this is going to work, but
that was total bollocks to me as well. Just like, well, we just put it back and all the necromorphs do
they'll
what?
Be fine.
Follow it, die, what?
So
what's your wife got to say about that?
On this mad let's ask her. On this mad goose chase, while helping Kine recover the marker, Isaac re-encounters Mercer, which is the crazy doctor who kills, this is what I was talking about, Temple. That seems to be the big necromorph. So there's the Leviathan, which is like the massive bumhole that's attached to the side of the ship.
Yeah.
You shoot in its hole, and then there's Temple, which is the indestructible one that you have to lock in that sort of chamber.
I thought that was Harris.
Is that so? I think Temple is Harris, who, as we'll come to it, is it Kendra? No, Kendra's.
Yeah.
Who you remember the person? I get pinning this. We'll come back to this after this paragraph. So before he is killed in turn by a necromorph growth. So what I've just said there is the doctor's killed by necromorph growths as you're trying to get hold of the marker. Eventually, Isaac retrieves the marker and loads it onto the shuttle, but in the process, Kendra murders Kine and escapes on her own, revealing that she was sent by EarthGov, who placed the man-made marker on Aegis 7 as an experiment hundreds of years prior, before it was uncovered by the Ishimura. To scrub the incident and she was tasked with scrubbing the incident and bring the... That makes no sense, what's written here.
What, she's supposed to scrub all evidence of the incident, but also bring the marker to Earth?
Yeah, so she's... I don't know why she runs off.
She does take the marker, though.
She does take the marker. Yeah.
What she thinks going to... Unless it's...
Yeah, seems like it. She's meant to scrub the incident
unless,
and bring the marker
because
back
it's
to
man-made, they can turn it off? I don't know. Think
Unfortunately,
about that and flick the off switch.
yeah, that's a bit of a disaster, actually. However, Isaac and Nicole, you would think the hive mind would want the marker on Earth. Anyway,
And so did Mercer.
we've stumbled across a plot hole. However, Isaac and Nicole, Isaac thinks it's Nicole at least, recall the shuttle and use it to successfully return the marker to Aegis 7, though Kendra flees through an escape pod during the return to the ship. When you reach the planet's surface with the marker, you encounter Kendra again, who at gunpoint reveals that Nicole was dead all along, having committed suicide to avoid becoming a necromorphs. The Nicole Isaac has been working with is actually a crew member named Cross. So I think Temple is Cross's partner.
Yeah, it's Jacob Temple, yes.
Jacob.
She thinks you're Jacob.
Yes. So basically there's this weird crossover going on where you each think you're each other's boyfriend and girlfriend, but you're actually not. So Cross we have also met before. Is it hydroponics or something? Who we meet hours before during the bit where you're running around stabbing.
Things
in the head. With
first of all, has
serum.
that looping warning message, doesn't she, telling you not to go, and then you do meet her and she tells you to go stab the Weezers, which is like she kind of names them on the spot, which I thought was quite funny.
She absolutely hates Weezer the band, so she's just going around having.
Oh, they've never been good since the Green Album, so I agree. I'd stab them too.
The thing I like about this actually, and I don't know if you had it or if it was just sort of luck that I had, was like when you go around the corner and that sort of automated message, she walks around the corner, gives you the information, don't come by here. So the first time I encountered it, you encounter it organically. There's a couple other times I come back and the automated message obviously comes out every time, but there's other times where like necromorphs are also coming, so this automated message is walking out having a conversation with you where you're like trying not to get killed. I thought that was really, really well done. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's really clever. Please turn back. I wish I could jump.
But yeah, basically it seems that the marker has manipulated them both to make them return the marker to something called the hive mind. Kendra then kills Cross before she herself is then killed by this now awakened hive mind. Q boss fight in which Isaac kills the hive mind and apparently escapes the planet, which then brings us on to the two endings, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that you want to discuss? So obviously we've just done a broad sort of overview of the story. Are there any moments that is kicked loose in the game? So like I wonder if it's worth also talking about the boss fight at the end.
I was just going to say that's what I want to talk about the most. Yeah.
Probably the worst part of the game for me. I don't think.
I think the boss fights are both disappointing and not scary in any way. Mm-hmm. They're far less scary than the actual necromorphs. When I played I forgot to send it to you. When I played the New Game Plus and I had to do the cryo chamber thing, I think I did that in about 15 seconds.
I did exactly the same thing. I had so much bother with it the first time. Yeah. And I was like, get in there. And every time I got out and got into like turn the thing off, he had got out. But honestly, exactly the same as you. I was like, I know what's going to happen here. So I stood back, saw him coming, shot him, just ran in and did it, and it was done in seconds. Yeah.
Did you see the little baby tentacle things all shuffle into a little like hole in the wall? It really annoyed. Like, fucking hell, you ruined all our fun.
He wrecked it.
I loved that bit. The Leviathan one is okay, where you've got to kind of shoot the balls back in his anus.
Yeah. It's fine. I said this to you at the time.
Because there's some 0G going on. I don't know. I can't remember how they did that in the original.
I think it's fairly similar.
But I found the fact that it was in 0G made that really trivial. Like, I can't get bum rushed by enemies because I'm flying.
0G. Yeah, I wonder if the OG is not 0G and you're sort of on a platform moving left and right.
Maybe, yeah. But the final boss fight sucks. And the worst thing about it, as I said, I prepared you for, was that I had run out of plasma cutter ammo and I'd unequipped it anyway, I think, for the final boss fight. So when I got grabbed in the very last ending bit, which is one tiny step above a QTE, I had the flamethrower and the force gun, and neither of which could reach it, and I just lost the fight and had to do it all from the start, which was so annoying.
It's a
and
shame.
the whole it's so video gamey, like, oh, he's going to spit acid on you, and then you've got to move left and right and left and right.
The old
Yeah,
boss
and
fight.
also there'll be a mob squad coming in at some point just to make it a little bit harder.
I think the old boss fight thing is a right conundrum, because obviously, like, they're doing it because they feel a need to escalate, don't they? But like,
Evidently,
is that game better because of a boss fight? I think it's worse. I don't think
absolutely.
the game makes the experience better. I don't think the boss fight makes the experience better. I think it's a net negative on the experience, and also because it's the last fucking thing you do as well. It's like your lasting memory of the game is this shitey boss fight.
There's also, and this may actually render every single boss fight in the history of video games to be complete bollocks, which actually plays into a terrifying thought I had while driving home from work today, where I just thought, imagine if David one day just goes, Alex, I don't think I like video games anymore. And then, just, oh shit, what else is there in the world? Or imagine if you just stopped liking them. Ugh, gross. Anyway, the size of the fucking hive mind, I can buy that this probably 40-something engineer with his super tools and his massive suit can probably handle the necromorphs just about, because he can freeze them in time and he can fling shit at them. I'm not buying that a giant fucking hive mind that's about 20 times his size, maybe, is not just going to immediately crush him to death. Like, why is it giving you all these chances? Yeah. Why is it like why doesn't it just belly flop?
It was actually a piece of piss as well, because it would always put its little poison strip in the same predictable places as well. So
as long as you stand to the side when he's
I was just like,
here
he comes, move sideways, shoot his balls, move sideways, shoot his... It wasn't even a hard one.
Like, I really have to suspend my disbelief to expect that Isaac could actually feasibly kill that, because it's about the size of a killer whale. No, not a killer whale, a fucking full-on whale. It's not bigger.
It's such a double problem as well, because like I think I've probably mentioned it on a podcast. I've almost certainly mentioned it to you before, that like horror in general, like once they do the reveal, it makes horror movies bad. Like, so there's a movie.
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield's a great example. It wasn't the one I was thinking of, but that's a great example of a game of a movie that is like really, really good, and then as soon as they show you what it is, you're like, oh. Mm-hmm. And there's another one, Jeepers Creepers. That's it. I remember. I've not seen this in a long time, so it may be bad now. But I remember Jeepers Creepers. I was like, oh god, this movie is terrifying. And then they show you the Jeeper Creeper, and I'm like, oh, it's really stupid.
Yeah, and the hive mind is really stupid. It's just a big brown lump.
Exactly. So when they actually just like show you what it is, it's not fun. This is such a divergence, but Cabin in the Woods, I think, is an example of a horror movie that does the reveal like excellently. But the movie changes from a horror movie into just like a silly action movie at some point. It just like totally turns itself on its head, which I think is really the only way to do it if you're ever going to have a big reveal. Which
technically, I guess this game does at the end as well. It just becomes a very binary action set piece of moving out of the way and then shoot for a bit.
I'm trying to
shoot the glowing objects. Like, come on, man.
I'm trying to sort of give the game a break, because obviously it's from a period in which like the games industry was sort of, it was sort of, I don't know, leaving its puberty period and starting to
it's 100% from that era where that was everywhere.
So it's maybe just sort of its era.
It's incredibly Resi 5.
Yeah, boss fights have got their place, like in the Souls series.
Yeah,
they're obviously awesome. I enjoy the Mario boss fights and things like that. So like in platform games, I think they're great fun. If you're trying to make us like a horror or a story game, you don't have to have a boss fight. But I feel like I'm bashing a horse that has already been bashed. Like, I feel like the games industry has largely moved on from this now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. It certainly made things like this become more, not intimate, but more sort of skill focused, whereas this just felt like very mechanical.
You take a game...
There's not a lot of freedom in how you beat it. You just have to hit the glowing weak. But as you mentioned there, you think about a Souls boss, they don't have weak points.
No.
Or if they do, it's just like their legs or their head or something. It's not like the glowing bit.
how much do you think the horror game industry has, like, so like, obviously the video game industry has moved on. How much has the horror game industry moved on? I'm trying to think of like the Resident Evil games have still got boss
Think
fights.
about Village where you fight that fucking, you're in that little
In a
tank fighting the giant like metal T-Rex or whatever it was.
I wonder if maybe the horror game section of the industry hasn't moved on as far as we think, and it still does do the boss fight thing.
Yeah.
But then I also, and maybe I don't want to cut things a break, but I also want to give like a Resident Evil a bit of an out, because Resident Evil at its heart is sort of silly and schlocky in a way that Dead Space definitely is not shooting for.
Yeah, and I think Resident Evil probably takes a lot of influence from the sort of body horror that's prevalent in like Japanese horror culture. So I think that they're maybe more about just like the spectacle and grotesque visuals that they create, whereas this doesn't really do that. It's nowhere near as grotesque as any of the necromorphs. It's just, like I said, it's just a big brown sphere with some arms on it and some glowing orbs that you shoot.
I think
but it's hamstrung by the original, and I guess they probably did the best that they could without just ditching it or doing it completely differently. So it's not, it's not the end of the world, just the end of the game.
So that massive thing on the Ishimura that you end up venting out the space hole into space.
But that's the one that you shoot with the cannons, isn't it?
Yes. With the marker, is that meant to be like a new hive mind that you're going to send to Earth? Is that where they're going with that? Because it seems to look vaguely similar.
It does. That's another disappointing thing, is that there's not a lot of variation. They're kind of indistinguishable.
Yeah. I wonder if that's what they're going to do. But then that doesn't really make sense that everybody's that's sort of controlled by the hive mind is trying to take the marker back to the planet. That makes no sense. Unless they've decided that Isaac has done so much damage to the Ishimura that that's not a viable way to do it now, because we've turned all the people that can do engineering into necromorphs.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to wait for another ship to come along. Maybe that's
yeah, we're bored of waiting. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go on a road trip.
What do you think of the two endings? Do you want me to? Do I have...
Yeah, please. You're going to need to explain the one that you showed me, because I don't know how you get that.
Okay, so don't let me. Right, so bring me back to development if I miss it, because I'm going to have to skip on my notes. Okay. So Polygon, thank you for the information. I've taken out some of your wording, but made for the most part this stuff. So in the standard ending of the game, Isaac escapes the age of 7, secure in the knowledge that he has destroyed the necromorphs and this thing called the red marker, and now everything is hunky-dory. This is Polygon's writing, by the way, not mine, and there's no more space engineering to be done. Until he once again hallucinates his dead girlfriend and we get a jump scare just before the credits roll. In the alternate ending, there's no pretense of hunky-dory. Isaac looks a little manic, or at least happier than he should, considering that what he's just seen. There's also scribbles in marker font covering every surface of the shuttle's interior. And Isaac's having a full conversation with his dead girlfriend. He says that he's got to build a little something first before they can go home. So, what does this mean? Dead Space in general, and Dead Space specifically, are cosmic horror stories. We could also call it a Lovecraftian horror, since it's a genre made most famous by H.P. Lovecraft. This brand of horror involves alien forces that affect humanity on an existential level. Think of Lovecraft's The Colour Out of Space, where the colour from space drives a family insane and mutates them into monstrous forms.
He really did hate colour.
He did. He's not a fan. Which brings us to Dead Space markers. In Dead Space lore, the markers, like the one Isaac doesn't quite destroy at the end of Dead Space Remake, are kind of cosmic horror themed Swiss Army knives. They're a source of limitless energy, leading to, the lore implies, interstellar travel. A communication device, also a necromorph creator, and a broadcasting station sending out a variety of signals. And singles, whatever you like to listen to. Some people just see or hear these signals as noise and hallucinations. Some, however, see something more. One of these signals is a drive for whatever intelligent being is nearby to create more markers. That self-replication signal is what led to the creation of the red marker we see in Dead Space, and probably explains all those little marker models that you have to find to unlock the secret ending. It's also what's behind. It's also what's behind the other red markers we see in Dead Space 2 and 3. In the first ending to Dead Space, we see Isaac escape the planet, and then we get a jump scare hint that maybe the waking nightmare isn't over for him just yet. In the alternate ending, we see confirmation of that. He's got a creepy smile, the marker ramblings that he likely wrote, all over the inside of the shuttle, and on his helmet, and his sweet conversation with the dead Nicole are a result of just how deep the marker signal got into his brain. So I added a David addendum here. Note the conversation you have with the lady who tries to abandon you. I couldn't remember her name at the time. Abandon you on both the ship and then the planet. She says something like, the markers messed you up too much to go home now anyway, which I think is actually...
Yeah, she does say that.
Quite a poignant point. A few years later, during Dead Space 2, we will learn that, and we'll come back to this, I suppose, in the next podcast, we will learn that Isaac has the full blueprint to the new marker implanted in his brain due to the events of Dead Space, and that the blueprint is used to construct a new marker, resulting in a new necromorph outbreak on Titan, which is a moon.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads, and that's it. Yeah, so that's the sort of gist of the two endings. So basically, I actually thought it was quite fun. So the first ending you see, essentially, is what Isaac sees. The secret ending is the sort of true ending that lets you see what is actually happening, which I think is also interesting.
Yeah, so... Okay, so... I'm having a look here.
You look like you're absorbing something.
I'm trying to, yeah, because my key question is if we take the game's first ending as gospel, moving into Dead Space 2, where Isaac is not dead, how does he survive being attacked by the Nicole necromorph at the end? Or is that yet another hallucination?
I don't see that he is attacked. The Nicole necromorph sort of comes and puts his arm on his shoulder.
That's in the secret one, right? Because remember in the first one, he watches the video of Nicole, then he turns it off, then he turns around, and then he gets attacked.
Oh, I forgot that. So he gets attacked by a necromorph.
Yeah, the shuttle. That looks like Nicole. She's like... It looks like her, and she turns her face to him, and then she just attacks him. So I don't know...
I've deleted that from my brain.
Here's another thing. Do you remember that... And I don't know if it's the same in the remake. It may well be, but do you remember in the original game, every name of every chapter spelt out Nicole is dead? Like the first letter.
Did
like
it?
An acrostic. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I think it's the same in this as well, actually.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. That's a great bit. That's a great little.
Because I also, as well, I believe in the original game, Nicole is supposedly opening all the doors for you because he's like talking to her over whatever. Comms,
so I guess that makes sense doors with the lady, because the person who he thinks is Nicole is a real person.
I thought Daniels was opening all the doors though, because she's like in the computer room doing all the hacking while fucking Matey Boy's hiding in the vents, which we haven't brought up yet. But the captain of your ship spends most of the game hiding in vents because he's scared, while he sends you out to deal with all of it.
Yeah. So in my head, so are you saying in the remake Nicole's opening the doors?
No, in the original.
In the original, Nicole's. Oh, I don't know then. I don't know. I can't remember. I think I only got to chapter 4.
Because it says, when Isaac departed to find the rescue beacon, the door was locked and the control unit was on the other side, which Nicole unlocked for him, unless he's hallucinated the door being locked. Another example is when Nicole was broadcasting to Isaac when she was attempting to stop Kendra Daniels from escaping with the marker. Technology cannot be affected by hallucination, therefore the only plausible theory is that he hallucinated that as well. It's... And it's also, there's this is on the Dead Space wiki, they're talking about like when did she make that final message, how could she become a necromorph on the shuttle that he's escaping on in all of the time since then?
She couldn't have, is the simple answer for that, because she died, so that she killed herself so she didn't become a necromorph, right? Although, that little bat thing suggests that they can reanimate corpses, whether they're a necromorph or not.
Yeah, exactly. She obviously didn't realise that.
She could have been a necromorph, yeah, she just didn't realise, I guess.
So, there's a 0.6 on this ending deliberation on the Dead Space Wiki that says a rather unpopular suggestion about Nicole's necromorph is that this may just be the red marker showing anger to Isaac as he never returned it to its pedestal, therefore never sealing the fate of the surviving necromorphs.
To me, and obviously, like, this is probably ultimately at the detriment of the game, but if I just sort of forget the standard ending and consider Dead Space with the secret ending, the game makes more sense, and the rest.
Yeah, totally. Because then you move on to series 2, to number 2, where he's in a mental asylum and whatever. That makes total sense. That he's
the first
just
ending
all happy.
Doesn't. Yeah, because I guess
he's got his helmet off and everything, so he's probably dead.
Yeah.
Unless he fights it off and kills it. But I don't know if the second. We'll find that out. But I don't know if the second game even tells you how he survives.
No, interested to watch that. I think that's maybe one thing we need to do is once we play Dead Space 2, go back and again rewatch these endings. I might do that before I start Dead Space 2. Rewatch both endings and then try and slot them in and see how they fit.
Because another point here it's trying to make is like, if the hive mind's dead, why don't all the necromorphs cease to function? So how's he getting done by a necromorph anyway? Shouldn't they? Isn't that the point of hive mind? Unless he just wounds it and it retreats.
It can't be dead then. It must be alive. It must just go away.
It says it is very unlikely that the necromorphed Nicole that attacks Isaac is a hallucination. What else does it say here?
I don't think. Could it not be? I mean, I feel like the Dead Space universe is created a scenario in which it can be both and neither, right? I mean, like, he can be being attacked by a necromorph, but also, if the game can cause if the marker can cause hallucinations, surely it can make it look like a Nicole, even if it doesn't.
Yeah.
But then in the secret ending, they don't marry up, do they? Because he's not reacting like he's being attacked. Although maybe does he at some point?
That one definitely seems like it's just a hallucination from the marker.
Does he at some point? He must at some point react like he's been attacked, because otherwise, when he eventually finds his way back to Earth and ends up in a mental asylum, they open the door.
Even that, he comes back and he's like, "Hey, me and Nicole are here."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No,
that's a necromorph."
Or it's nothing.
Yeah, they could just be the same thing at different times, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that trying to marry the two up doesn't quite make sense. Yeah, that's a weird one. I'd be interested if someone who's listening knows the answer to this and they're currently walking their dog or driving somewhere shouting at their iPod. What is this? Well, this is 2008. It's fine. Get in touch and let us know. I think it's podcasts that are winners you. No, it's not. It's not. It's
winnersyupod@gmail.com.
That's it. I've got it right in front of my face. winnersyupod@gmail.com. Send us an email and tell us your theories on it, because I'd be interested to hear what people think about this.
Yeah, because even IGN in their Dead Space ending explained don't go into it at all. It just says, realizing he's been controlled, Isaac races Daniels back to the ship but is intercepted by the hive mind, blah 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 blah. He defeats it, but the damage has already been done. Isaac flies the shuttle into space and removes his helmet in silence. He turns to look in the passenger seat and sees a dead version of Nicole staring back at him. It stares for a few seconds before attacking him. Although Isaac does defeat the hive mind and escape, the damage has been done. The marker has corrupted Isaac's mind, driving him insane. As we learn in Dead Space 2, he'll never recover from its effects. How does he not get killed by the necromorph that attacks him? Unless it's a hallucination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah, I just prefer the secret one.
Yeah, I think in my head now I'm just going to forget the normal ending, and the secret ending is now canon.
Ooh, because he says actually in the secret one that he's going to make something for Nicole, right?
Yeah, which I think is the next marker that he has got imprinted on his brain.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because he does build a replica found of it on Aegis 7 in between the two games. But more on this in the next episode, I guess. When
I guess we've got this. We've got
more. We may find out
more confusing unitology lore to come back to.
Yeah.
Do you think
Bloody Tom Cruise?
We'll come back to this actually. So the development. I've got a little bit of the development. So, games journalist Jeff Grubb, then of GamesBeat, now of Giant Bomb, he was the one that sort of broke the news that a Dead Space remake was in development. He reported that a remake of Dead Space was in development at Motive on the 1st of July in 2021. He speculated that the success of EA's single-player Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is 2019, and Capcom's remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 were instrumental in the publisher's decision to greenlight the Dead Space remake. The game, I would also like to say, and I don't think I've got it written here, that when you make remakes of games and remasters of games, this is also an opportunity to test the market. Like, I know this is a remake, but a remake is still cheaper than a new game from the ground up, and this is an opportunity for EA to test the market for the Dead Space audience, because obviously, much like BioWare did to Mass Effect, like the result of Dead Space 3 has real insignificant damages that it will cause to the franchise. So, like, maybe you
and the developer of it.
Exactly. So, this is an opportunity for them to say, is there something left in this franchise or IP, or have we killed it completely? I think that's also a reason why people would make a Dead Space remake or a remake in general.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not just part of a creatively bankrupt publisher just going, I got nothing. Dead Space remake? That seems to be working for Capcom. Let's do one of those.
I mean, I'm slightly worried by I guess we can come back to this, but I am slightly worried by the sort of AAA publishing sector at large. I mean, Ubisoft have got significant money problems. I don't really see where EA are going next. I mean, they get a lot of money from FIFA, which is no longer FIFA,
and Madden.
Like, I don't see where they're coming from this. I mean, like, on a large scale, I guess on a smaller scale, I would like to see this get the Resident Evil treatment. I'd like to see a Dead Space 2 remake. I'd like to see I'd like them to see something with Dead Space 3, even though it's an action game, it's not a horror game. And then I'd like them to continue the franchise off in a different direction at the same time, much like Resident Evil have done.
Yeah, exactly. Different. Yeah, if they could do sort of the dual pronged assault that the way Resi is doing, where you've got but
the question is what they do with Dead Space 3 though, because it's just so bad.
Well, and amazingly, EA didn't ruin this in any way. They just don't seem to have any fingerprints over this.
They've just nailed it. Absolutely.
Thank Christ, they just let the developer do
no microtransactions.
Yeah, just nothing. And I feel this financial situation that a lot of these companies are getting under, which we shouldn't feel sorry for, and we probably is being overblown anyway. I can see it being offset for a generation until technology allows them to create huge experiences at more cost-effective or in more cost-effective ways. And until then, perhaps everybody needs to do some disgusting children gambling bullshit to fucking bankroll the sprawling single-player narrative-driven game, unless they're Sony.
Yeah.
So, EA will always be able to afford these things because they'll always be raking in idiot money from FIFA Ultimate Team, but not every developer has that going for them, like Ubisoft, which is why they're kind of fucked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is the thing that Ubisoft have sort of tied themselves to dodgy stuff, like crypto and like things that
Square Enix too.
Yeah, things that are going nowhere, and it's just like, well, you've sort of made your bed. Unfortunately, your games lack any sort of creativity and nuance. They are just like I say this all the time. They're just every Ubisoft game is slowly conglomerating into this like gloopy mass of all being the same fucking game. All climb a tower, expose some map, open world, upgrade your gun, bollocks. And people will get bored of that, and the problem is if you hitch your entire wagon to it, when people get bored of it, your entire business model is a bit stuck.
I just hope that.
Where's Rayman? Why are we not getting more of those?
Yeah, and this is the problem, and I really hope that good games continue to be commercially viable, because the agreed science of video games should be, if you make a good game, people will buy the good game.
Yep.
But if people stop doing that, then all you have to do to make money, or the easiest source of making money, is to make cynical games that manipulate people with gambling addiction, then we're all in trouble, and the market is filled with shit.
Do you not think that's the problem, though, is that that massive companies are all chasing that dragon? So
there will always be more non-gamers than there are gamers. That's just the way that it is. And
they're looking at Fortnite, and they're like, we all need a Fortnite. Totally forgetting the fact that there really can only be one Fortnite.
And copying Fortnite to try and leech off the success of
reactive.
Fortnite won't work.
Yeah, you're being reactive.
Radical heights.
But you and I are both fans of sports. When you look at the best teams in the world, they're not reactive. They're not reacting to what other teams are doing. They're sort of doing their own thing, and they're laying their own path. I think that is largely
that's why Alex Ferguson was so successful.
Exactly. I just don't. I don't like the fact that Ubisoft have essentially done that. They've found something that they think works, and they're just trying to just basically chase it. And I don't think that works. And I think you need to spread your bets. Like they should. Like Rayman games cannot, for example, I'm not been buying those. They cannot be that expensive. There's no reason you can't have that type of game. There's no reason you can't have an indie bunch like they used to have, like a bunch of indie studios. What was that game where you could like climb things as a little robot? And
I know the one you mean. Yeah,
that was a Ubisoft indie thing. Like they used to do indie stuff, and then they stopped because they're all chasing this stupidness, like climb towers, like I said before, and it's nonsense.
Or live services, which is another thing that we're now seeing start to show massive cracks, and so many of them are getting shut down.
Yes,
I mean, and Apex Legends we play constantly, and would probably sit there and assume between ourselves is a successful live service, but they've just cancelled the single player, what effectively would have been Titanfall 3, and they've killed the mobile version, right? So nothing seems to be a safe bet anymore, other than potentially stripping back costs to make more God of War stuff, because that sells like hotcakes.
This is the thing that brings us back to what you were saying before. Make good games and people will buy them.
That should be how it works, and I don't want it to not be that way. I hope enough people buy this game to verify its existence,
to show EA
to help push
that,
them.
like, you don't have to microtransaction a life out of something. You can you can spend X amount of money and make a 50-100% profit on it. You can, like, that in itself is value. That is an IP that people will like, and people will come back to, and people and talent that you're cultivating and passing on information to, that they will then go on and make something else. I mean, we look at like the amount of developers that go on and make other great things. Yes, there are some misses, but at the same time, the amount of people that if talent breeds talent. So if you allow talented people to do things and explore the space that they want to, yes, you might not make Fortnite money, but only Fortnite is actually going to make Fortnite money. So why chase it? Why chase it?
If the mindset is that, any money is not enough money, then you're on a hiding to nothing, or you're on a hiding to an endless cycle of uninspired dross that is purely for profit and not for art, because games isn't art.
Yes, and if you're not in it for art, go away. To me, like, go away and go leave, go and do something else. Go and sell stocks. I'm not interested. And I also think, like, if the metaverse is not a lesson to everyone that you can't just throw marketing money at things and make things happen. Like, if something's shit, it is shit. Like that, and that's the end of it. Like, people don't want that, and they're not going to buy it. You can throw as many billions of pounds as you want. You can look like a lizard as much as you like. It's not going to work if people don't want it. Yeah. But where did we get to? So we were talking about development of Dead Space. So the game was developed by EA's proprietary Frostbite engine, which Motive Studios previously used to develop Star Wars Squadrons, which we touched on earlier, and the single-player campaign for Star Wars Battlefront 2. The game retains much of the same story and structure as the original, but features completely redesigned assets. I don't know why I'm struggling to say that. Character models and environments. It was the original intent for the developers to take advantage of the SSDs in the modern machines and make the game one long sequence, much like that of God of War. They manage this for the most part, but there are sections where they take control away from the player so they can properly arrange camera angles, like when you encounter the Doctor for the first time and it focuses you on the table and then moves back to the right and you see him standing in the doorway to shoot you with his stasis. The original Dead Space was noted for its audio design, and that was something that developers hoped to evoke and build upon in the remake. And the voice of Isaac, as we've said before, is the same actor, Gunnar Wright, who played him in Dead Space 2 and 3. Tanya Clark also makes a return as Nicole, reprising her role from Dead Space 2. I know
Which is very good.
Yeah, I know you mentioned sound design, Alex. I think you've spoken about it already, but it's just something that's very, very well done in this game.
Yeah, like I said, the sound and the lighting, I think, is phenomenal throughout.
There's that. It's that first, the bit that sticks out to my memory as well when you were talking about lighting. Even that first section where you use zero gravity and you're sort of in this sort of cylindrical area, and it looks like it's filled with bodies in some sort of stasis. Is that what that is?
Seems
they
to
never
be.
really mention that, which is really odd. But yeah, the area when you get to that in Dead Space OG is so much. It's quite funny how simplistic
it's a bit of a throwaway bit, isn't it? But it's quite grandiose in this one. You remember the bit as well where you're in some sort of like, it's like almost like a tunnel or a bridge from one area to another, and you first get attacked by those dudes with the big stacks of explodey shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the light, is that where the lights click on?
It's just like it's just like firing through the chamber just constantly. That's just mad, that lighting. There's loads of areas like that where they've really gone to town with it, even though they didn't try and take advantage of this like variable rate shading.
I never messed with this, and I when I was watching what's the
Digital Foundry one,
the Digital Foundry video, they were talking about the two different modes, performance and quality. Yeah,
so because they didn't utilize as much of that variable rate shading for the lighting effects, like the ray tracing stuff, it's not as much of a significant drop if you play in the performance mode versus the quality.
Right, okay. I didn't realize there was an option for the two, and I just played in whatever it was. It started and it was absolutely fine for me.
I think by default it turns into the performance mode because you don't have an option to choose. You can just turn performance off, which is such a weird thing to want to do. I don't want performance. Reduce the performance of this, please.
Out of just like an NB, I played this on an Xbox Series X and S, and
did you?
Yeah, I honestly didn't notice the difference between the two.
That's interesting.
As good on both.
That is interesting.
And I think I will be continually astounded on how much they managed to wrangle out of that Xbox Series S for the amount it costs versus what you get out of it. It is amazing, that thing. That is an amazing console, that thing. Anyway, Alex, do you think they just dive into Dead Space 2? And I know we've sort of touched on this. Is it next step for EA, Dead Space 2 remake? What do you see the future of this franchise being now? Because it seems that it's been received well. It seems to have sold well.
Does it? Do you have sales figures there?
Let's have a quick Google. Dead Space.
Because I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it, wanting EA to make money off of this, but I want them to have a reason to carry on with it.
Okay, so I maybe have to rejig what I'm saying. So it's selling well, but tracking behind expected sales. So,
of course, it is though. It's EA. They probably expect too much every time. I mean, they have released a game basically in January. So
it's tracking behind.
What do you expect there?
It's tracking behind Callisto Protocol, apparently.
I heard that as well.
Which is a shame, because this is a far better game. It sold about over 2 million copies, and they had expected 5 million by this point, which seems high.
It does seem high for what is essentially a remake of a 15-year-old game.
Yeah.
It's not that, but on the surface it probably looks that way, and there may be some people who are so fed up with remakes, because I have seen a lot of people say, it was your mate, wasn't it, who said everything coming out this year is basically a remake or a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I would, so, yeah, like my personal opinion on that is that I get the sentiment. I think the AAA space is very clogged up with remakes, sequels, and remasters. I think if you're saying the games industry is what, so like my friend was trying to suggest that the games industry is creatively bankrupt, I think that is woefully naive. And I think that you just have to look around yourself and look around at the different games coming out outside of the big developers and the big publishers to think like creativity is as alive as it's ever been. And if you think it's not, you're just looking in the wrong places, quite frankly. And you can be more wrong about the video game industry. And if that, I hate to be brutal, but if that is your view of the video game industry, you just don't know games. Because the games industry, there's so much creativity going on just now in the games industry. I mean, like Vampire Survivors, I can whip that out my ass. Wildermyth, I can whip that out my ass. I've been like there's so many games, like you just don't buy the thing that everyone's buying. And there's so much happening.
There's never been a bigger platform for small creative studios to be heard than there is now. So yeah, that doesn't wash.
Yeah.
But I also think there is a place for stuff like this.
Yes,
there is not a place for things like The Last of Us remake, because we've already had a remaster. Yeah, there's not a place for that. There is absolutely a place for revisiting a game that is decades old and doing everything that has been done with this game, because what has been done with this game should be the gold standard for how you deal with making something revitalized, making something visually better, making something play better, and modernizing it and putting it as your own. They've created this different version of an AI director for the remake of a game, which they could have got away without doing at all. They've interconnected the world. They could have got away without doing it at all. They didn't even need to get the voice actors back, but they did. Everything that they've done in this game in that regard is such a positive and thoughtful step towards making the game better.
And they seem like little things, but they're actually massive. Like when I realised that when I was playing the OG Dead Space that it was just level to level to level, that it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference to making a world that feels interconnected and real. Like I'd say the Dead Space remake feels like a ship, whereas in my memory, the original Dead Space felt like a ship, but going back to it in 2023, it doesn't feel like a real ship at all. It feels like I'm going to level to level to level in interconnected places.
It's almost like going town to town or whatever on a train, isn't it?
You don't even see the train move. It just sort of cuts to black, comes up, and you're in a different place.
You're just looking at the little visual sort of board, aren't you, where it's got like the little LED thing, and then whereas this one even allows you to keep control while you're on the ship.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic, and I think
this is incredible.
They've done things that make the game feel like, when we describe them on paper, it feels like such a little difference. Like we're talking about like the interconnected world and stuff like that. But actually, when the rubber hits the road, it just creates such a vibrant, cohesive, and alive experience. And I think this game, I totally could not agree with you anymore. When you were talking about like The Last of Us remake, or what is it, remaster? I don't even want to dignify it by saying it's a remake. It's not. It's been remastered twice. There's no need for that, because we've just played it and we've just played it again, and you're charging us an amount of money for something you've basically rubbed a sponge over. Whereas this is something that has had real work put into it. It's significantly older than all these games, and a lot of people won't have even played the original at this point. And this is something that is valuable and was every bit like, I was never bored. I was it's one of I don't want to over egg it because we play a lot of good games on this podcast, but like it's one of my favorite games, and it lived up to what I wanted from it, and it did everything I wanted from it, and I've come away from it feeling much better about this series than I even did before. Like I feel so nice about it. I wonder if it's worth actually now. I've got a list of some changes, Alex. This game has done. So I thought I would run through them. You can give me a reaction. What do you think of it? Whether you think it's a good change, whether it surprises you, maybe it's something that's unexpected. But I've got a few here, so we'll run through them and see what you think. You can just give me your reaction to them. So, Dead Space OG had no side missions, so doing the side mission in the remake gets you an upgraded stasis effect that adds an electricity damage to the enemies in the game. This upgrade was just not present in the original game.
What?
Yeah.
How did you get that?
You just do all the side missions, and it does.
I thought I did do all the side missions.
Maybe you did, and you just didn't even know it was happening. But yeah, so eventually when you stasis enemies, it starts doing electricity damage, which is just completely new. I
must not have done it then. Oh, that's annoying. I made a conscious effort to do every side mission. Fuck! I don't think I did then.
I've upset you now.
You wouldn't let me see the running order because you wanted a genuine response, and there you go.
We've got it. The OG Dead Space operated, we've spoken about this, but I'm going to read it anyway, within a level structure that usually ended up with you going back to the train and beginning automatically, and you were automatically moved elsewhere. In the remake, you can go anywhere at any time. This is offset when they added the clearance levels within the game. We spoke about that, and I think we both think that that's a good thing, and that's a great addition to the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isaac has a voice, but they've also redone every voice and sound in the game. They massively pad out Nicole's story in a way that is never explained in the OG game. So again, linking back to the side missions, they go through the side missions, and much of the side missions is linked to Nicole moving around the ship, speaking to the doctor. That stuff is just not spoken about or mentioned in the original game, and I think it's a nice addition.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Makes Nicole feel more real, makes the world feel more real.
It makes you want to care about the fact that she is part of the story as well.
But again, we've spoken about this, but there's an alternate ending. They have added an alternate ending that you can view by playing the game you can only view by playing the game in New Game Plus mode and collecting all the marker ornaments. I like the fact, and maybe it's the way that Polygon wrote their piece, but I like the fact that they link the marker ornaments and the collectibles to the actual ending that you're about to see.
Yes.
That's nice. And I can't really think of a game that's done that. And obviously there probably is. It's just not jumping to memory, but it's a nice touch that I think a lot of games don't do. They just sort of have collectibles for collectibles' sake.
Yeah, exactly. Or there'll be some like, spurious reward somewhere in the gameplay, but this actually makes the New Game Plus worth playing through if you want to do the extra content and then see the extra ending at the end. So yeah.
A weapon upgrade tree revamp. In the original, the whole tree is available from the get-go, and not all node placements result in an upgrade. I think as it is now in the remake is far better, and it's modernized it in a way. And this is the thing that remakes should do. They take things that seem quaint and they make it modern and make it work. And I like that a lot.
And it values your time in searching for nodes and whatever by making them actually useful, rather than some of them being a stopgap throwaway thing that you have to fill an empty gap with, which is bullshit.
Exactly.
That's not rewarding your efforts and time.
Oh, excuse me. Not at all. Exactly. Totally agree. They've also, as we spoke about, reworked the zero gravity. In the original game, you just kind of... This is something that really confused me, and I was Googling it, trying to make it work.
You had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, you just sort of have to... You aim at a spot on a roof in the original game, and you press like Y, and you then, or triangle in the PlayStation, then you sort of fly towards it, and you've got to sort of zigzag your way to the platforms you need to be on, whereas this game has got zero G sections, much more like Dead Space 2, which I'm interested in seeing, because apparently they just go full zero G and you can float around and do what you want.
How is that even zero G in it? I suppose he has got like leaded boots or something, but it doesn't make a lot of sense how he could just kind of like fly or just do one massive jump to go to the next bit.
The asteroid section is completely redone. So instead of manually controlling the guns, you can link them to your weapon now. And
I didn't really realise what was going on at first. I think I was always...
I died because I couldn't figure it out either. I made a mess of it.
I was always stood behind the console, like trying to aim my gun that way.
Oh, I didn't even do that.
You can just float around wherever you want and aim if you want.
So what I did is I float, because I didn't have a lot of air, basically. So what I did is I floated up to the console, pressed A, and then moved on to the next one, pressed A, and then moved on to the next one. It wasn't until I'd pressed A on all the consoles that I was like, this isn't...
Well, these guns aren't shooting at anything.
Yeah, this isn't working like I was expecting it to. But yeah, apparently that was one of the main complaints of the old game. Is that what was basically what happened was you had to go to the guns and manually control them.
It's like a turret.
It's more of the
2008 would be 2008ing all over it.
Makes
I guess.
Sense, yeah. So they've redone that and it's much better now. And I agree, it's great. Apparently, there was an achievement in the original game that you had to complete that section with plus 50% hull integrity left, and people were raging because it was really hard. But I don't remember that at all, yeah.
No, I don't remember that.
The Peng treasure, as we both we felt so good about ourselves by finding.
Yeah.
It's a secret collectible item that has been around in every mainline Dead Space game. In the original OG game, it was right at the start of the game, but locked away in a container until Chapter 11. Due to the open nature of the Ishimura now, they moved it in the old location where the previous Pen treasure was. They've put a text log that hints at the new location, which I thought was quite cool.
Oh, that is very cool. I like
that. Weapon discovery has also been retooled. You now find each weapon, whereas previously each weapon could be bought in the store instead of being found, which we both
much more organic, obviously.
Much more organic. And the bit that I haven't added it to these notes, but the bit in the piece I read about this was that they've also, of course, added the like animations about him finding the weapon, fucking tricking it out and pulling it apart and looking at it, and I just think that adds to the feel of the game, which is great.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, like putting together the plasma cutter and then like having a quick admire of it is that's the kind of additional touches you want.
The second to last one I've got here, which we've already touched on, health items are now more scarce in the remake, which I think was evident when I played. That's probably one of the only
things I bought, that and plasma energy, because I used to just basically never found energy for that gun.
Yeah, it was so rare. And in the remake, there's no loading screens. Again, like the old God of War.
Of course. I did find out in the end, by the way, that, you know, when I said what's the secondary fire for the contact beam, that's not the gravity well, because that one's on the force gun. It's like a massive, just big shot of green energy. Just proper.
I don't think I ever used that.
It's almost like a rocket launcher. You sort of charge it up, and it just give it a try next time you boot up the remake. You'll see it's quite fun. I have more of an appreciation for the contact beam or whatever it is now.
What the other weapon I enjoyed but didn't seem to do as much damage as I felt it was that like blast shotgun thing. I just really enjoyed using it, but so many enemies just rolled it and just kept coming at me.
That's the force gun, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I found that was quite effective for the hunter. Could just stasis him, get right up close and blast him as much as I wanted, and then he would be in pieces and I could run away. Although apparently the agreed tactic for that is
the big guy.
The indestructible thing.
Oh, right.
The one that regenerates.
So what's the agreed tactic?
You're supposed to blow him up and then stasis him.
Oh, because then he can't rebuild himself.
Or he rebuilds himself slowly, whereas if you've done it the other way, his stasis is going to run out and then he'll rebuild himself quicker. But you're supposed to blow him up, then stasis him, so he takes ages to get his parts together.
Okay. The other enemy...
But I think if you get 2 rooms away from him, he despawns, from what I've read somewhere.
Right,
So again, in my New Game Plus playthrough, as soon as I saw him, I would blow him up and just run and go through 2 doors and be like, done.
In the New Game Plus, he's not a problem. Same with the big guy. What's he called? The massive beast that you first encounter. Because basically, what I did with him, is it the Ripper? So basically, you stasis him, walk behind him, and just stand and ripper him, and then he dies. And you're like, well, okay, that's the end of you.
Just hold this up your ass for a bit. For a second. There you go.
Free node for me.
Yeah.
Again, that's true. The enemies that were super scary just became a nothing when you knew how to deal with them.
Which is why I think it must be hard to get back into the headspace of doing them
Headspace
organically
and
for the
Dead Space.
first time around. Yeah, because now you're in a completely different mind frame about how to play the game, and you're just like efficient now. Whereas before, I was for a lot of the time holding my gun to walk forwards in dark areas and corridors. Like I would walk for a
Oh
lot
my
of. I wouldn't be
God.
sprinting as much as you do.
You weren't watching me when I was playing the OG game when you turned the lights out for the first time, were you?
But
Oh my
I thought I
God.
watched all of it, but maybe I'd gone out somewhere.
It is so dark that you can't see anything.
Oh
unless
yeah,
you
no, I
go-
remember you
oh
saying
my
how dark it was.
God,
Yeah,
couldn't see a thing. That was scary. But what
Yeah.
a game! What a game!
Oh,
10 out of 10 for me. I absolutely
strong
love this.
contender for our game of the year already. and
Already.
it's well, I mean, it's up against God of War at the moment, so
Yeah, so
it's a
good.
good start to the year.
This game was so good it's derailed our plans already because peek behind the curtain, folks. What we did at the beginning of the year is we sat and we made a rough.
Oh, that was on a
timeline.
pod.
Was that on a pod? We made a rough timeline of the games we wanted to cover
Oh.
for the year.
Yeah, and we also picked one definite one that we were gonna
Yeah,
have to play this year each, and we did that on one of our pods where we both
we've already
laid it out there.
We've already edited the calendar. We've just made it to February because we both just wanted to jump into Dead Space 2 right away.
Yeah,
So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be the next podcast. We'll be jumping into Dead Space 2, doing a podcast about that. Apparently, How Long to Beat says it's around 9 to 10 hours, so
that could be up quite soon.
could be up quite soon, yeah. But that brings us to the other things we've got to do, which I guess, like I was saying, what have I got here? I've written this, but I don't think it quite makes sense, but I'm going to read it anyway. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of episode 53 of the Resurrected A Winner's Review podcast. Alex, this is the big news of the day, though. I believe you have some news and housekeeping to bring the millions of listeners up to speed with.
I suppose so. Yeah, if it will be permitted, there is another podcast on the horizon, as well as me and David both doing. Say that again. As well as David and I both being part of a new Gears of War centric podcast, Gears Intel, with our good friend KDB, which you should all go listen to. I believe episode 3 of that is gonna be recorded in a couple of weeks.
I never know what episode we're on. I was on Twitter today and I saw him. He was like, episode 3 is coming out. I was like, did we not do that like 2 months ago? Sorry,
It's been ages. Maybe we did do 3. Did we do 3?
The man
we did. Sorry, he's wrong. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he's going to release 3 soon.
Yeah,
but we've already recorded
the man
it.
is releasing us well. It's just I've already forgotten where we are by the time he's releasing it.
I'd forgotten that too. I forgot we've recorded a 3rd one that's not out yet. That should be out soon. Yes. And also, myself and 3 of the guys from the now defunct Sega Mania magazine and podcast have also started another podcast called the Video Game Hall of Fame, where we each nominate one game from a specific genre every episode, and then the winner that goes into the Hall of Fame is decided by a Twitter poll, which at the moment is not going in Super Mario World and my favour for 2D platformers, but that's because people are wrong.
What have you got? Give me or is that wasting the first podcast?
Simon pulled a bit of a curveball out and voted for Dynamite Heady, which I've never played.
Was that not a thing from the Sega Mania days, Dynamite Heady? I feel like that was...
Yeah, it was one of the last... It was in the last issue we did. I think he reviewed that. It's by Treasure, so it's like Gunstar Heroes developer. It's supposed to be really hard, though. So that's a Mega Drive game. Steve nominated Sonic 1, another Mega Drive game. Rob nominated Sonic 2, another Mega Drive game. And then there's me with Super Mario World. So the Sega Mania hangover is alive and well on that podcast.
Yeah, so I feel like that's why you're losing, because let's face it here, Super Mario, your one is the best. Like, there's no...
Well, we think that, but apparently everyone thinks Sonic 2 is the best. So
Sonic 2 is very good, but...
Mario World is almost perfect. I'm not having that Sonic 2 is better. I'm just not.
Sonic 2 is very good. Mario is, you're right, perfect.
Yeah.
Super Mario World is perfect.
Yeah, so that episode 1 is out now, and episode 2 will be coming soon, which will be first-person shooters. So that I cannot think of one at the moment to induct there.
That's
or
hard.
to nominate. There are so many great ones, and I don't know whether I want to say something like Doom, but there are better games that have come out since then, or is Doom 2016 Heresy? I don't even know.
What are your rules? Is it just whatever rule you feel like? Because like Doom's obviously an important game, but like we spoke about with was it Return to Castle Wolfenstein? Like, that is an important person shooter, but do not play it today. It's shit. today.
Yeah.
But if you're like a bit of a fucking nerd about video games, it's probably something you should have played or experienced, at least have some sort of context to be able to speak about.
Yeah. I mean that. Yeah, you'd think if it was a real Hall of Fame, that would probably be in there for the influential reasons. But I guess we're only nominating one each, and I guess everybody comes at it with their own idea of what makes something nomination worthy.
Doom 64,
so I don't even
because that's so good.
Yeah.
But it's on a
I think I've got a good idea of which one I want to nominate. I'm going to play it again beforehand. I would really like to think it could be that Half-Life 2 could be in with a shot for me, but I don't want to go back and play it again for some reason. Something's making me think I can't be asked.
I am looking forward to hearing that. And listeners, if you want to know what Alex selects as the best first-person shooter ever,
just go to VG_HOF on Twitter and you'll find it all there.
Exactly. And that's it. What's your Twitter, Alex? Give us your Twitter handle. Because I don't know mine.
At SuperThrillix.
At SuperThrillix. Mine is, if you want to give me a follow. Have I got some abuse on Twitter? Yes, I've got some abuse on Twitter. And mine is... I can't find it. At David Smiley1, SMILLIE. And the Twitter for A Winner's You is at winner_... Alex, you do it. I never do these socials right. I need to just I just need to divorce that task to you because I don't think I'm ever going to write once. Tell us the social media for A Winner's You.
It's at Winner Is You Pod.
And we've nailed it. And on that bombshell, I've been David. He has been Alex. We have been A Winner's You. And I'm out.
Keep gaming.